Start now.
Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today I'm living mythology. We have the pep talk with John Carl Pepe. Greetings, John. How are you?
Greetings, Hercules. Very good, very good. Happy to be back again. This is at the time of recording, August 2nd, 2026, and our summer quincentennial celebration continues. My original plan for tonight's show was actually to look at one of the most influential and iconic American bands, specifically of the 20th century, but into the 21st century as well. Really wanted to talk about the Grateful Dead tonight, in part because one of the most consequential dates of Grateful Dead history falls upon the upcoming birthday of my first guest that I'm going to introduce tonight. No stranger to the show, Matthew Demek. Thank you so much for coming back.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me on the pep talk, John.
Always good to have you, man. Matt is the curator and creator of the Blanks and Postage YouTube channel, and that is BLANKS ampersand. For those that don't know, ampersand is actually what that squiggly and symbol is called. POSTAGE, all one, no space. And yeah, so Matt, we'll get to kind of what that is and what Matt does in a little bit. But basically, I had another guest scheduled for tonight who actually has a book coming out about the Grateful Dead. And I thought, oh, this is great. This is going to all sort of converge and be a nice special thing for Matt's birthday coming up, and something that he could really sink his teeth into and really enjoy. And then unfortunately that person had to cancel out at the last minute, but we're working on getting that person back closer to release date of the book. So that will happen at some point. So then I said, well, how do I pivot here? All right. So I know I got Matt, who, again, Blanks and Postage is largely clips of Phish concert, live Phish concert that Matt has attended. Only a fraction of the number of shows that Matt has attended in his, experience seeing the band Phish over spanning 4 decades, right? So he's got a wealth of knowledge about this band. So I knew Matt would be absolutely okay with the pivot and totally on board with it. I was almost going to make it a birthday, like tell you tonight, like right now in the moment, but I decided no, let's just in case he wanted to prepare anything. So then I thought, well, okay, so now I need someone else to round this out. And I remembered on one of our Andy Kaufman shows, that came up in conversation that the second guest I'm going to introduce tonight was a big Phish fan and has sort of, in comparison, I think recently started going to live shows. And we're going to kind of talk about his experience with the band Phish, and of course Matt and him have a lot of shared experiences with recent Phish concerts. So I can't wait to really get into that. So ladies and gentlemen, my second guest tonight, he is the creator, curator, and overseer of the Overnightscape Underground. He has been podcasting since before podcasting was a thing. Some may know him as the Rampler to this day. Again, he has been a cohort in my Andy Kaufman internet meanderings, and we've done several shows around that. So, as I said to him in the text when he agreed to this, it was fantastic. I'm really happy to have you on for some non-Andy related content. Ladies and gentlemen, Frank Edward Nora, the Rampler himself, back on the Pep Talk.
Hello, great to be here.
Great to have you back. Great to have you back. Thank you again for coming in on the clutch at the last minute. So real funny context because I always love how these things kind of work out. So I reached out to Frank last night and he sent me a volley of texts. Basically, yes, let's do this. I had mentioned Matt, because again, I think that on that show, I said, yeah, we have to do a Phish show at some point. So I figured, okay, now we're going to do this show where you guys are going to dive into it. And he says I'm watching Fenway right, or I'm watching Phish live at Fenway right now, not in Fenway, but at home streaming, was Matt at all 5 of the MSG shows? And I said, yes, Matt was at all 5 of the MSG shows and happens to be at Fenway at this very moment. So I thought that was really fun little coincidence and synchronicity there. So really, before we get into the things, the topics we're going to kind of hit one by one, culminating, I think, in just the live experience and what we have all gleaned and gotten from that. I just want to make a disclaimer. The fact that I have changed topics from the Grateful Dead to the band Phish is in no way endorsing the popular misconception that Phish and the Grateful Dead are interchangeable. I think that there's a lot of people that do still believe that misnomer there. While I will say that Grateful Dead being one of the most influential and iconic bands, American bands of our time, and Phish, I would say among all the bands that have vocally or even not vocally or subconsciously taken inspiration, influence from the Grateful Dead, I will say that Phish took that assignment and ran with it and made it something their own. But I think in the spirit of what those guys were doing specifically, I think the one thing that everybody latches onto, different show every night, different set list every night, and the tendency that if you don't like lots of spaces of music between lyrics, you know that is something on the surface that the bands do share. But we're going to get into a little bit of that comparison as well. But first, I kind of want to give it to Matt to give us a very brief history of the band Phish, their beginnings, some of the high points and the low points, because this is an American rock and roll band story, and there have been some low points. But again, like any good hero's myth, there is the rising redemption. So Matt, give us a little bit of the history of Phish and tell the people who don't know what they're going to get into for the next hour.
It will be my pleasure. And just to echo what you were saying, and from my perspective, Phish was always a band that built upon the Grateful Dead's legacy. They took the archetype, they took the blueprint, they took some inspiration from what the Grateful Dead was doing, but they made it their own. Phish music and Grateful Dead music are not one and the same. Phish does not play any Grateful Dead music at all, once in a blue moon, only under special circumstances, right? So, Phish, 4 guys from Vermont that met up at college in 1983. They formed a band. They started very small in Burlington, Vermont, in the local bar and club scene. From there, the local Vermont community embraced them, and they were able to take the small following that they grew in Burlington and grow that exponentially to all of New England, to all of the East Coast, to all of America, and eventually the world. So we've got Phish now starting in 1983. I would say really by 1992, they opened up for Santana, and they were one of the headlining acts on the Horde tour. That was really their first summer as professional touring musicians on the amphitheater circuit. And through a not just cult following, but a grassroots networking effort, very much the same way that the Grateful Dead didn't use a lot of promotion other than tape trading, word of mouth, and the overall community. The Phish was able to take that to the next level using this newfangled contraption in 1993 or so called the internet. And Phish was really smart with their marketing, and they were able to take that small tape trading community, which had its historic roots in the bluegrass community, with Bill Monroe. They would get together at the Hootenannies. You've heard about the Hootenannies, right? And they would trade tapes. It was an open, it wasn't a flea market, it was a tape trading market. And that was where Jerry Garcia learned it. He was a tape trader in the park, when they would have the big bluegrass festivals, the Hootenannies. Also in the jazz community, you had audiophiles who would go with their reel-to-reel players, and they would, very specifically mic the rooms so that they could get a good recording. They paid attention to the quality of the recording. And so you really think about the Grateful Dead before Phish, that they were able to combine the tape trading communities of the bluegrass community and the jazz community very much the same way they blended those styles of music. So, the tape trading was naturally a byproduct of that. Phish, as you said, took that ball and ran with it. And they were able to organize, not they, but their fans were able to organize tape trading trees on the internet where you could trade with other show tapers. Phish allowed taping at their shows in a time when the only other band that did was the Grateful Dead. Again, playing two very different styles of music. And what wound up happening was, it exploded. And then Jerry Garcia died, 1995. And this community that was already thriving and flourishing now had an influx of Grateful Dead fans. And not necessarily fans that were even going into the shows. People that, that Grateful Dead traveling circus that really, in some ways, led to the downfall of the band. That traveling circus, that touring community that got to a point where it was unmanageable and unsustainable. They said, all right, we got a new band now. And so we have this, influx of new fans, which is a double-edged sword because it brings a lot of resources. It brings a whole new community. It brings a whole new vibe. But, you've got a lot of deadheads who are like, all right, I'm going to try out this new band. And then they go to a Phish show and they hear Phish cover Highway to Hell from AC/DC. And they're like, wait, this is not the Grateful Dead. Some people warmed up to it. And, what I always say is Phish is not for everybody. But Phish fans are very intense about their fandom. And Garcia used to say about the Deadheads, Deadheads are like people who like licorice. Not everyone likes licorice, but people who like licorice really like licorice. And it's really the same thing with Grateful Dead fans and Phish fans, Trekkies, Star Trek fans, or even Star Wars fans, that Marvel, DC, that fandom is not, it's not casual. You're either in it all the way or anyway, getting off topic here. So the community explodes with the passing of Grateful Dead founder and lead singer and guitar player Jerry Garcia in 1995. And a lot of that traveling circus, for good and bad, went over to the Phish community, which brought with it a lot of drugs and crime in the parking lots. And what was going on in the parking lots was often what was reflected backstage. So those drugs and the things that were going around and going on in the parking lots suddenly found their way backstage to what Phish intimately called the Betty Ford Clinic. And then they just shortened it to the Clinic, which was basically a free-for-all party backstage. And that led to, as you mentioned in your opening, some substance abuse issues within the band, and ultimately a deterioration of the product, all aspects of it. And by 2004, they decided to call it quits. We're out. Now, they had done a hiatus in 2002, which didn't even last a year. They were too restless. They couldn't give it up. But What you didn't know is behind the scenes, several of them were dealing with severe substance abuse issues that were, you know, very dangerous. So we get to 2004 and they decide we're done. Enough is enough. Uh, this is unsustainable. In very much the same way the Grateful Dead had come to that conclusion in 1995. So who knows what would have happened had things progressed. They took a few years off, and during that time, uh, co-founder of the band Trey Anastasio, the lead guitar player, lead singer, um, was arrested for a pharmacy in his backseat. Um, and with that, he went to drug rehabilitation court and he cleaned up his act. He got his act together, he sobered up, and got the band back together. Got back together in 2009. And now here we are in 2026. And last night concluded one of the greatest tours in the band's history. So, John, I'll give it back to you.
Very good, very good. Wow, Hootenanny, Horde, and the Betty Ford Clinic. Google's going to be going nuts after this for some of the people who might not know those. Horde, I was thinking about Horde the other day. Horde is a very interesting thing. It was an acronym for Horizons of Rock Developing Everywhere. And it was sort of the alternative to Lollapalooza, where Lollapalooza was a lot of your Jane's Addictions and your sort of harder edged bands, a lot of your grunge bands. This was your jam bands, your hippie bands, and that's sort of like Blues Traveler and Spin Doctors, and that's how Phish kind of wound up on that. But yeah, I think that was one of the first big things that really, I think, opened them up to people outside of the New England area, or I think by that point they had done some shows in Colorado that really like people were crazy about them up there too, So yeah, so that was really you hit some really great points there. So I kind of want to go over to Frank. Now Frank, I would say I was surprised to find out that you loved Phish as much as you do. I think my big surprise was, for a man of your travels, you only fairly recently started seeing shows. Did you only fairly recent like did you probably within the last 10 years, I'm thinking?
Yeah, so mine is kind of a strange tale, and you'll have to excuse me. I have what they call the Wook flu. I went to all 5 shows at Madison Square Garden, and just yesterday started coming down with symptoms of a very bad cold or COVID or something, and I'm suffering from it today. But they call it Wook flu. It's very common. In the Wook is a term for a Phish fan, a certain kind of Phish fan.
That's okay. Yeah, and also
Yeah.
it's the sort of the same thing as con crud. People who go to San Diego Comic-Con or New York Comic-Con and then get sick after that, they call it con crud.
Yeah. So I have fallen victim. But yeah, for me, it's been a long journey with Phish because back around 30 years ago, so maybe 95 or 96, I was working in the printing industry in New York City, and the guys that ran the place, their cousin, also named Frank, was a huge Deadhead. He loved the Grateful Dead and he loved Phish, and he wanted to get us all into the Grateful Dead. That was his ultimate goal, but he felt it would be too hard to just go straight into the Grateful Dead. So he's like, I'm going to have them listen to Phish as sort of a gateway music to get into the Grateful Dead. So he started playing us a lot of Phish back then, and I really quite liked it. And it was one of those things. It was like sort of this crash course in Phish. I remember listening to the Mango song, which unfortunately now is very rarely played, but one of the lyrics is, "Your hands and feet are mangoes. You're gonna be a genius anyway." And I was asking Frank, like, what does that mean? Your hands and feet are mangoes? He's like, listen, don't worry about that. It doesn't mean anything. The lyrics don't mean anything. Just go with it. So after that, I remained a fan, but for some reason, I don't know what my mindset was back then. I wasn't really going to see any live music. I can't imagine why I wasn't. I both with Phish and the Grateful Dead, because I've become a huge Deadhead as well. All these people in my life also tried to get me into the Grateful Dead through all parts of my life, from high school to work to college, and at every point I'm like, no. And it haunts me to this day. But I continued listening. In fact, that final show in 2004, I remember listening on the internet. They actually broadcast it over the internet, but it was like staticky, going in and out. Like streaming wasn't what it would become.
No, no, that was the show. That's how bad it was.
So I mean, and then apparently, the curtain with was the final song. Please, please have no regrets. Uh, and apparently that was like super. So I was into them to that extent. I don't know why I wasn't going to shows. So finally, Baker's Dozen 2017, Madison Square Garden, 13 nights, each one based on a different donut. Midweek, I go on, like Ticketmaster or one of the StubHub. I don't know if there was StubHub back then, but there was a real cheap seat. I think it was in section 209, which is my favorite number. So I'm like, I'll go after work. And so I went, and that was the first time I went, and I was like, what the heck? What? Like, I haven't been going to these shows. So it was an amazing show, as the Baker's Dozen was an amazing show. It was the Canada night, Maple Donut night. And I just remember they played The Wedge, which was at that time one of my favorite songs. It still is a song I like, really do like The Wedge. And there was a guy next to me. He's like, oh my God, I was talking to him. I'm like, yeah, this is The Wedge. And he's like, you know these songs? Wow. Kind of like just the other night at Madison Square Garden, these people are sitting next to me, and I think that they're in the wrong show. They're just kind of not paying attention to the show. And then, as you may know, I think it was the fifth show, they did a harpua. And I was like, oh my God, because I was there when they did the last harpua, New Year's Eve show, 2023, I guess. Was it 23? Yeah, the Game Hen show. So I looked over at the guy. I'm like, and he just looked at me like, what? This is just another song. I know most people listening don't know what harpua is, but it's a very special.
It is, yes.
So anyway, like to me, once they started streaming the shows, I've been watching every single show for like the past, I would say 8 or 9 years. I know they didn't stream every single show, but I've been streaming every show and going when I can, especially to Madison Square Garden. I went down to one night in Delaware for Mondegreen. I went out to Sphere, which was the first Sphere in 2024. Those all 4 nights I went to, that was completely mind expanding, life changing. I went to the first three earlier this year. And, and now all the people around me trying to understand what this is all about, because Phish has had no hit songs on the radio. And most people have never heard of a Phish song. And a lot of people never even heard the name of the band, this band that's selling out Madison Square Garden for 13 nights, 8 nights, 7 nights, whatever in a row. And when I tell people, yeah, well, like, they're like, why do you go every night? I'm like, you're going to hear the same songs. I'm like, no, if they do 5 nights, they will not repeat a song. They did 9 nights at Sphere and they did not repeat a single song. People don't understand that. They're like, how can they have that many songs? It's just a different kind of band. And not only that, every night is different. Listen, they're not all the greatest shows. I think that the first set of the first night at Fenway, I thought was really sleepy. But the second set, of course, had the biggest bust out in the history of the band with Melt the Guns, a 2051 show bust out. And the following night, last night's show, I thought was much, much better. Especially the first set, I thought was remarkable. But sometimes they're amazing, and sometimes it just kind of fails to take off. And that's what I love about it, because you never know what you're going to get. You go in to watch a show or sit down on your couch to start streaming a show, and you're like, I don't know what's going to happen. What kind of bust outs? I just wish they'd do more Sci-Fi Soldier bust outs, but they don't. Thanksgiving is my holy grail. It's a shame about the blood. They only ever played it once.
Nice. Yeah, it's really interesting. In kind of thinking about all the things that go into this band, and yeah, that sort of a band that has sold out MSG as many times as they have, approaching 100 shows, right? We'll kind of get into what this last run at MSG was doing there, because that's kind of part of what I'm getting to. That there's still people that have this, either non-awareness or misconception about this band. I think almost 10 years ago, back during the Baker's Dozen, some folks that I was working with, they were like, "Oh, what did you wind up doing last night?" I said, "Oh, I went to the Phish show at MSG," and they were and they explained to me. They said, "We had no idea we have no idea what you're talking about. We didn't realize it was a band. We didn't know there was a concert. We thought it was like the Westminster Dog Show but for fish, for aqua. They're like, how does the
They
obstacle
must
course
have
work?
that, right? They
Yeah,
must have an aquarium show like that.
right. So, and you would think that that at this point now in 2026, you know, this is a band that has done few things that other bands have done as far as sustainability, um, getting better with age, and the fact that it is consistently been the same four members of the band throughout. Not many bands can say that. There are some bands that are truly the ship of Theseus at this point, where there's no original people in the band, but they're still calling themselves that. So I find that interesting, and one of the things that I think might be part of that sort of, people who just don't get it or don't understand it. It is the lore. It is the stats that you just rattled off, the joy of having a favorite song and seeing, waiting to see that song, because it's not a given on any show that you go to. The fact that they do theme shows, the fact that they hold, big events for their fans, like things that are just that built a sense of community. This is a band that used to have a physical paper newsletter that you would sign up for and we'd be mailed to your home.
And they kind of
And
brought it back.
nice,
Yeah.
awesome, awesome. So I love that there is this deep lore, but I'm also a big comic nerd guy, right? So that lore is like part and parcel for what I look for in things. And all bands have lore, but I don't think people understand the lore that Phish has. Um, whether it's Gamehenge or the secret signals, or or the secret language, or again, why did this MSG shows play out the way they did. So before I kick it back to Matt, I do have a follow-up question for you, Frank, about your exposure. So when you were introduced to Phish, they were playing the studio versions, right? Was the live bootleg an element of your introduction when he was trying to turn you on to Phish?
Yeah, I think that he definitely had bootlegs, but I think also the Phish studio albums are better in relation to Phish than the Grateful Dead studio albums are in relation to Grateful Dead. 'Cause I never listened to the Grateful Dead studio albums. Maybe I should, but I only listen to live shows. And I really don't listen to the Phish studio albums too much, but you know, I think but they're very good. I mean, I guess everyone should start off with Junta, right? Their first big album,
Yeah, yeah,
and go from there, I think. But
yeah.
I've had a
So
hard time getting people into Phish over the years. As Matt said, it's not for everyone. So I think I've only
yeah.
been able to successfully convert one person to be a Phish fan.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's kind of hard because it's sort of like, do you just give them live stuff? Do you give them the studio stuff? I found a cover song that they do, because I think they do some of the best covers out there. And I find finding a song that they do, that the person I want to introduce is just like that they like, or it's in their wheelhouse. I always find that that's a good way to start. Blew people's minds a few times by playing the White Album from, when they played that in its entirety at Glens Falls. Again, that's another part of their lore and their the things that go into being this band. So Matt, I want to kick it back to you, along the topic of lore, or events that they do, like Clifford Ball, or their Halloween shows, things like that. Give us a little bit of context on what I'm talking about there, but I also want to know kind of what your favorite inside baseball Phish things are, like secret language or things like that.
Well, you hit the nail right on the head. And when you look at Phish and you look at Phish as a whole, you are looking at over 40 years of inside jokes and pranks that people draw reference to. And you learn about this stuff again through the tape trading. And that's how you kind of get caught up to speed on the history of the band, all the festivals that they've done, and this is a band that does a lot of very interesting things. And for Halloween, they don a musical costume where for one set of the night, they will be the Who, or they will be the Beatles, or they will be Talking Heads. And they don a musical costume, and note for note, they recreate one of their favorite albums. They used to have the fans vote on it. This kind of stuff has been going on for 40 years. So even today, they make reference to the uh, the wealth of inside jokes. And you know, that's part of what the Phish experience is all about, because when you know those inside jokes and you see something that they haven't done since the 90s, and that was one of your favorite tapes to listen to on road trips, you know, it's a rewarding experience. And one of the other things that you touched upon was how, and I'm going to go there and say, obsessive Phish fans are with data and stats, uh, even more so than some sports analysts I know. You know, it's sabermetrics on steroids. And there are actual mathematicians in the Phish community who process the data. And now with AI, you know, sky's the limit. And, you know, we can go over all the stats for the 2026 summer tour now that it's in the books. But what you find, and, you know, Frank, I wanted to remind you, last night was 9 years since Maple Night.
Oh,
Nine
really? It
years
was.
ago last night was
Wow.
Maple Night. And John, you and I were at Maple Night together. Now,
Wow. So we were there at the same time. Wow.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
and we're talking about, you know, talking about inside jokes and talking about you know, the Baker's Dozen. What the Baker's Dozen was it was 13 nights in a row at Madison Square Garden. Every night, and that's a Baker's Dozen, 13. Every night as you entered the show, you got a gourmet donut. And that donut flavor determined the theme for the night. So, Strawberry Night, they opened with Strawberry Fields Forever. And they played Strawberry Letter 23. And there were a lot of references in their songs to strawberry. So they did all 13 nights. One of my favorites was Boston Cream Night, where they did a mashup of Boston and Cream songs. And now we're coming up almost on the 10th anniversary of the Baker's Dozen. And they're still doing these stunts and pranks. And, you know, this past 5 show run at Madison Square Garden represented their 92nd, 93rd, 94th, 95th, and 96th shows at the world's greatest arena. And for each of those nights, the theme of the night was a set list that they would have performed during that year of their career. So on 1992 night, you got to see songs that they really only played in 1992. They didn't play any songs that they played beyond 1992. And so they brought back some unique covers that they used to play only, you know, in small theaters. You know, their first show at Madison Square Garden was 1994. So the material that they were drawing from on the 1992 night was from a time period before they even played Madison Square Garden. So it was a great opportunity for them to bring some of that stuff back. And I think they're checking a lot of boxes with a lot of the material that they've played. They have over 1,000 songs in their repertoire that they play differently every single time they play them. And sometimes they mash the songs up. Sometimes they have unique song combinations. People analyze the songs and the set lists and the shows. There are stats for how many songs have opened certain sets, how many times a certain song has been encored. You can, you know, run all the metrics.
Nice. Frank, do you have a specific favorite, you know, piece of the lore or gimmick or you know, concept that they've done? Anything that you're like, this is like the craziest best thing ever?
Well, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I'm sort of in the minority, but I really did like Sci-Fi Soldier because they stopped doing actual other bands' albums for their Halloween costumes.
Mhm.
The first one they did was rather successful, called Voxed, and they actually went as far as to have WFMU and another music blog backdate articles about this fake album. So when people started looking it up, they would find these old hits from like 2012 or something. And one of the big things for me about Phish is on Reddit, on the subreddit, they have setlist threads for every show. So you can follow along live to see what everyone's saying about the show. There's even one guy that posts Magic the Gathering cards that relate to each song. I always love to see that. But on with Cosmovoxed, there was this feverish research going on before it started because the I guess like the graphics were released of the cover. So everyone was saying this can't have been made in 1980, whatever, 1982, because we found the town that the cover image was made in, and we're on Google Street View now. We're trying to find the exact spot, and then I found the exact spot, and then I screenshotted it. I'm like, see, this screenshot was taken like just 2 years ago, and the album was supposedly from, and it caused all this furor. But like that shows you how crazy people are about this stuff. But Sci-Fi Soldier was one of those concepts that I loved. They were these beings from outer space that sort of took over the bodies of Phish. And what I thought was really fascinating about it is there was this character named Holy Blankenstein, and there was a sound effect that Fishman had been playing, the drummer had been playing the entire year, which is sort of like, or it's very hard to imitate that sound. But like all year, he'd been playing this bizarre sound on his sample pad. And so Holy Blankenstein was another name of the Holy Iculus from the much earlier, from Gamehenge, basically. So they were trying to bring it all together, and I really loved all the songs. And unfortunately, the reaction from the fan community was very negative towards Sci-Fi Soldier, and I thought that was rather unfortunate. And the only songs they've really been playing from there, and they haven't even played Howlings for like almost a year now. And they used to play Egg in a Hole more, but like I think like 5 or 6 of the songs from that album, they've never played again after that one Thanksgiving. So that is the one I'm sort of obsessed with, Sci-Fi Soldier, because it's so rare. That's probably why I'm obsessed with it.
Nice. Yeah, I always thought that was really neat that some point, yeah, when they decided to stop doing, wearing other people's albums as musical costumes on Halloween, that they did create these fake bands and started doing that. And again, I thought it was a very Andy Kaufman-esque thing to do. And I think a lot of things, aside from the obvious, I think Frank Zappa influences as far as in the storytelling aspect of songs like Harpua or the Gamehenge cycle. I definitely think that there's a little bit of Andy Kaufman's things that remind me of Andy Kaufman.
Oh, it's performance art. It's performance
very much
for sure.
And every show is a scene, in and of itself, and an experience, and you are taking the audience along for a ride. There's no doubt about that. One of my favorite pieces of lore or little things that they did to play with the audience was always the secret language. I always thought that was such a great concept, something I really wish they had been able to kind of continue a little bit more extensively. But it was something where, like, in the early 90s, there's a show where it's explained. I'm sure, Matt, you know the exact show where Trey kind of explains the secret language. What's the show?
Portchester Theater. I know it's 92, but I don't remember the exact date. But it's the one that's got the antelope with the Spider-Man.
Yep.
Spider-Man.
Yep.
I actually recorded my copy of that show from you back in 1996 or so.
Yep.
And what a fantastic gag, prank, but also an ingenious way of including your community and creating a community. And talk about an inside joke. Imagine you walk into a show, you've never seen Phish before, you don't know what to expect, and in the middle of a jam, everything is freaking out, everything's going crazy, and all of a sudden you hear the guitar player play the opening notes to the Simpsons theme, do 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 do, and the entire crowd in unison chants "Don't!" all at once. And everybody looked, what is this? Where did this come from?
So my absolute favorite one of those is the turn, 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 where the signal would be the strains of the song to everything turn, 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 and then the those who know would turn around and scream at the back of the auditorium or the theater as if they were screaming at the front. And the way Trey explained it is great. He goes, so that way, if you're like if someone who's never been to a show is behind you and doesn't know the secret language, all of a sudden you turn around and scream in their faces as if the front of the show. You're like they'd have a great time. They'd love it. They'd it would just be wild. So that is like my absolute favorite thing like that, you know. I just find that so amusing and so it just plays into my sensibilities very well. Um so
What, John, let me just, can I cap this one off? Because what I
yeah.
love so much about the secret language is how they proliferated it. Because they did 3 or 4, maybe 5 shows where they explained the secret language to the audience. And then they just let word of mouth and the tapes take over from there to the point where a year later, they'd roll into Alabama and they'd say to the audience, you know the language? You know, like without even having to explain it, and everybody would cheer because that audience in Alabama had also come from Arizona and Texas, and they were following them throughout the whole East Coast, and they were waiting for those secret language cues, which were derived from how they used to communicate with each other during jams. And I believe the first one was Get Back. If the jam strayed too far away from the original song, Trey would play or Paige would play a few notes from Get Back. Do 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 do, and they would go back into the song. Now, that was a musical note and there was a musical cue and it was a nonverbal way of communicating that goes back to the jazz era. But they took it a step further and they ran with it, just like you said earlier.
Yeah. Uh, so Frank, next question to you, and then Matt, I'm going to throw it to the same question to you as well. It's a twofold question. What is your favorite Phish show, whether it's one you've attended or not? And then what is your personal favorite Phish experience? Because they're not necessarily the same thing, in my opinion. So I'm going to throw this one to you.
Yeah, I mean, those are easy. I actually mentioned them already. My favorite Fish show was New Year's Eve, the Gamehenge show. It was so funny because for people who don't know, Gamehenge is their sort of foundational story. And there were these rumors that they were going to perform it with Broadway dancers and puppets. And even after the, at the set break, I was getting a drink and someone was like, "How you doing, man?" I'm like, "I'm good. I'm just waiting for Gamehenge." He's like, "Let it go. It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. Don't get your hopes up. Don't be disappointed." And went back, and then it happened with the Harpua, and then into Jimmy and his grandmother and all of that. And well, the grandmother wasn't part of the original song, but Poster Nutbag lives at that night, but died the other night. But anyway, that was absolutely amazing, and I almost missed that show, but through circumstances, I actually got there. It was the Cosmos, um, you know, making sure I was there for the greatest show. But my favorite Fish experience, without a doubt, was the first run at Sphere in 2024. That was like nothing. We had no idea what to experience. The graphics they created and the overall experience was just amazing. And then just sort of arriving there with all the Fish fans from the Venetian or out on the street. You had to decide which way you're going to go, inside or outside, and then going back inside or outside. It was this ritual, this amazing thing, and I got to experience it again. It wasn't quite the same. It was amazing. The graphics were kicked up a notch, but I didn't like how they repeated graphics weekend to weekend. But that's a minor quibble.
I think they were, yeah, because I know for the second run they really upped the graphics game a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
some of them were unbelievable. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, really good.
Still trying to feel out the Sphere, and definitely a different experience for them because there's a lot of people might, some people might not know, the light show is a big part of the Phish live experience. And Chris Kuroda, the light guy, is sort of like the fifth member of the band, and a lot of those light cues are done on the fly, on the spot, improvising with the band. And I think that is also a really neat aspect of it. And again, another reason why one should actually experience a Phish show, whether you know the music or the lore or not, but just a chance to be in that atmosphere, in that environment.
I try to tell everyone, they keep saying no.
And the other and so I think with the Sphere, that first run of the Sphere, you're taking that light element largely out of the equation, and then that's okay, so how do we do this in this way?
No,
So
they brought it back for a few months ago. There's a virtual light rig now.
yes,
I
yeah.
think was a little controversial. I started off being annoyed by it, but because I went there to see the amazing graphics, but then a lot of times it got really cool. So, but the virtual light rig to me was sort of a mixed bag.
Yeah, well, I think Matt, I think you had mentioned this in some other conversation, on some thread that we have, that wasn't, that Chris was involved with, that was like part of the condition of coming back to the Sphere to sort of do this virtual light rig so he could actually have, an experience and not just take the night off, right? Like,
Well, I love the virtual light rig. And to me, it brought the experience of a Phish show into the Sphere, which full stop is the most incredible experience. And to combine the Phish experience with the Sphere experience, you've got two great tastes that taste great together, because Phish cares about the experience that their fans have, which is something that separates them from a lot of other bands, especially the bands that go out there and give you a cookie cutter show every night, same 5 songs or same 12 songs. Um, and, so that light show it makes being there so unique. And in my videos on my YouTube channel, part of what I try to capture is the light show and the effect that the light show has on the mood inside the arena and on the crowd. And, sometimes the light show drives the band.
mm-hmm.
Sometimes the band drives the light show. And sometimes it all happens simultaneously, where the band is inspired by the crowd and the lights are inspired, and everyone is just locked in and in a groove.
So Matt, what would be your favorite live Phish show and your favorite Phish experience?
Well, I can tie both of these in together, because a band like Phish, and when you've been seeing them, I've been seeing them with you since 1993. And during that time, having so many different shows, there's so much variety. There are some shows that I go to when I need like spiritual inspiration. There are some shows that I go to when I want to laugh. There are some shows that I go to when I need to, when I need to get psyched up. My whole career, I've always put on the December 30th, 1995 version of Harry Hood, which was the first time they played that song at Madison Square Garden. And it has this really uplifting jam. And it gets me psyched up. That's what I listen to in my headphones, like, right before I need to conquer the world. So different shows for different moods, different shows represent, and then to tie it into personal experiences, a lot of shows I like to put on because I had great memories attached to them. 30 years of memories chasing this band around America with my friends. My wife is closing in on her 200th show, and I took her to her first one. So, I have a lot of emotional experiences that when I put on, that show is a night in my life. And, last night was my 266th Phish show. So there are 266 nights of my life that I could slip into the CD player and remember, what was going on in my life at that time. And, they're all milestones on the journey. And, for 30 years, anytime anybody that doesn't know Phish asks me what my favorite Phish show is, I always tell them the next one.
Yeah, nice. Wow, 266. I wish I had those numbers, not just in fish shows, but viewers on my show here. Um, so and
Well, John, I didn't get there in one night.
Yep, it's true. It's true. And yeah, I think well said, Matt. I think I'm of the same thing as far as like all those experiences are so special, and sadly these days are few and far between just because of logistics and how things shake out. Um but I definitely think that if I had to choose my favorite show, it would have to be that Lowell Mass show. Smallest venue that I had to see got a chance to see the band in, saw all those shows premiering, or those songs premiering for the first time. And so we had a great time, almost an impromptu drive up to that auditorium. But that was really good, travel experience, and show experience. That probably is definitely up there for me. Just for clarification's sake, you actually saw shows before me. I think my first show was 94, Garden State Art Center, July 2nd, I want to say. So you had you had the because your first show was December 93.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I went with you to my second show in 94.
In 94. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Oh, what were you gonna say?
Um, no, so we've been going back all that time together. And I remember when we went to that Lowell show, you say almost impromptu. It was 100% impromptu. We found out about it that morning, and we hopped in the car. To this day, that's the smallest venue I've ever seen them at, less than 1,500 people. It was a voters for choice benefit.
Yep.
And that whole night, they played all new songs, which today are classics.
Yeah, yeah. And I would say my favorite Phish experience was going to see them at Letterman in 95.
Whoa.
That was a
Was
interesting.
that the Julius one?
That was the Julius one. Yeah, yeah. It was just a really neat experience, and almost by happenstance, this is our 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon story, because a friend of ours brother worked for some PR firm, or some firm representing Kevin Bacon, and Kevin Bacon was the guest on Letterman that night. And each guest gets some tickets for their friends or family if they want to come. And Kevin Bacon's family wasn't available, so this guy had like 4 seats at Letterman, to be there as Kevin Bacon's family, I guess, so to speak. Not that we had to like pretend like we were, but and it and he and this person who worked at the PR firm was like, well, who else is on? And some band named Phish. The other person, oh my gosh, my brother and his friends love Phish, and so he's like, we'll take those tickets, when they were offered up. But yeah, that's our 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon story. And one of the funny things about that, Matt, if you remember, is we were waiting outside, as they were coming out the stage door, and 3 of the 4 band members all came out at one time, got in the limo, and drove away. And then the bassist, Mike Gordon, comes out, and he's kind of like looking around befuddled, like, where'd they go? They left. Did they leave? We're like, yeah, Mike, but we can give you a ride if you want. We kind of, he's like, no, I think I got it covered. But that was a fun one.
The Tower of Power horns played with them that night.
Yeah.
At on Letterman.
Yeah.
And we got to hear the sound check, because we got to go in a little bit early, so we heard them rehearse that song a few times. And very unique experience.
Yeah. So, Frank, what do you think the future holds for Phish?
Well, what I keep telling everyone, why do I keep seeing Phish? I say, imagine if the Beatles were still together. Wouldn't you want to go see them? This is not going to last forever. Nothing lasts forever. And I just hope it lasts keeps going as long as possible. And yeah, I always love the new music. I think there's been a lot of great new songs recently. Mine, 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 mine. Life-Saving Gun, right? There's some great new songs. I love that they're doing new songs, because actually the Grateful Dead, after Jerry died, when they were the other ones and then the Dead, they kept making new songs. And those songs are now lost to history for some reason, because none of the subsequent bands would play them. So to me, new songs are very important. Only the Strange Remain comes to mind. I like that one. I know they're not the best songs, but so I want to see more new songs. And I want to say, because I know with this 90s nights, they're like, oh, why don't they play every song, just 90s songs? No, that was wonderful that they did that, but I like all eras of Phish, and please bring back some Sci-Fi Soldier songs. At least Egg in a Hole, come on.
Hey, maybe these guys are listening. Who
Yeah,
knows?
hopefully they are.
We'll see. We'll see. I mean, I know that I think Matt, you have met all four members of the band at various points. I did, but I cheated. I lived in Burlington, Vermont for 8 years, so it was very easy. One of my favorite interactions happened to have been with Paige. I worked at this bookstore, and all three of them had been into the bookstore at various times. I was actually told by John Fishman once that I was known as Bookstore John when I wound up working at Club Metronome, which was the club above Nectar's, but Nectar's used to be a two-floor club, and Phish actually played on the second floor stage of Nectar's when it was a two-floor club. So again, when I was working at Metronome, that would be the same stage. So yeah, I think it was after the Great went, I believe. That following Monday or whatever, I'm back at work, and I go upstairs to the little cafe to get coffee and my chocolate croissant. That was my little routine breakfast thing there. And there's Paige McConnell, keyboardist of Phish, sitting at one of the tables, outside of the main thing, reading a newspaper. And I said, "Oh, excuse me, Mr. McConnell. I just hope you don't mind me interrupting. I just wanted to let you know that I had a really good time. I really enjoyed myself this past weekend." And he looks at me and goes, "Oh, really? What did you do?" And I thought that was the funniest thing, because it's like you know what I'm talking about, but you're making me think that you think that I'm some kind of lunatic. So I said, "Well, I was at your show. You guys did a great job. Keep it up." He goes, "Thank you. That means a lot." So it was a really fun little interaction, I think, that I really enjoyed. But Matt, I'm gonna I think give the last one to you, because Frank kind of touched on something there as far as you know the state of Phish and things like that. And they have always said, they are in fear of becoming a nostalgia act. And so again, for people to be like, "Oh, I wish every show was like this 90s run." You know, Matt, do you think they'll ever let that happen, or do they know enough to keep creating new content, or to bow out gracefully when it starts to feel that way? Do you think that that is ever a possibility for them to really kind of fall into the nostalgia act trap, or do you think they'll constantly keep reinventing or staying relevant?
They've been reinventing themselves for 40 years, and they've always stayed relevant to their community. Maybe not relevant to what's going on in Rolling Stone, but if you ask me, they outlived Rolling Stone. Uh, they created the business model that so many bands from Metallica to, are now following them. And the real secret is Phish is the greatest band ever. So I think Nostalgia Act, they're playing right now. Now you have an opportunity to see one of the most incredible bands that's ever lived, that's got a 40-year catalog, and they continue to improve and get better. People 100 years from now will be studying their repertoire, their timeline, their milestones, all these different pranks and inside jokes. There's a whole universe of material and content to draw from. And generations from here forward will go back, revisit all of their live shows, because there's so much variety. There's so much breadth and width within their entire history that it's only inevitable that their history will be researched.
Awesome, awesome. Wow, thank you so much, guys. This has been great. Matt, you kind of hit the buzzword there. This is such a blast. Three content creators talking about content. So that was a lot of fun. So really quick, in the little bit of time we have left, Frank, give us the details of how people can find your content.
So go to the Overnightscape Underground. It's at onsug.com, ONSUG.com.
All right, very good. And Matt, how can people see your content?
Blanks and Postage on YouTube. Check it out. I've got about 750 live Phish videos that I've all shot myself over the years.
Very, very good. Very good. Folks, I don't have to tell you how to find me because you found me. We're here. You're watching the Pep Talk. And this has been our episode for August, kind of continuing our summer semi-quincentennial celebration, because one of the great things about summertime, it's not just blockbuster movies. It's not just about baseball. It's not just about, the World Cup or the Olympic, depending on whatever 4-year cycle you're in. But it is also about getting the chance to go and see live music. It's the summertime is the best time to do that. And it used to be great to go see an outdoor live show. There's no doubt about that. But the way things are heating up in the world right now, nothing wrong with seeing 5 shows in a nice, cool, air-conditioned Madison Square Garden in the middle of the summer. I fully support that and stand by that. So again, I want to thank Matt for joining me again. You will see him again on this show. I want to thank Frank again for joining me at the last minute to make this show a reality that we had talked about a while ago. So I love when that kind of works out when that happens. Frank, I know you'll be back on the show at some point too. Hercules, as always, thank you very much for this opportunity to be here every month to talk to people about things that I love with people that I love. Ladies and gentlemen, go out, find something to love, find someone to love, but keep that love in your hearts, and we'll catch you the next time. As always, we're the only rule is it begins. Yeah, that's how I'm going to end it this time, like I ended the very first show. All right, later, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. I
Even
learned
this show
a
got
lot
number lined.
from the band, their lore.
Thank you.